welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt, and once again, it's a warm welcome to you again for joining me here on the channel for a new wee video, which thankfully you'll be grateful for because we are not once again picking over the bones of that absolutely dismal performance over in Kazakhstan that unfortunately saw us drop out the Champions League and down into the less desirable, some would say less competitive, but that's a story and a conversation for another day, Europa League. It was disappointment, but the show must go on and Celtic have a job to do. We have a big game against Rangers at the weekend looming that could extend our lead at the top of the table to 9 points over our supposed nearest rivals. But we also have, as I said, a Europa League campaign to look forward to. Some might say not look forward to, but certainly a campaign that we need to tool up for. Because one thing's for sure, after that disappointing defeat to Kairat Almaty, we knew the obvious. We could have been doing with some extra bodies in the door. The players, the manager, the fans, everyone in and around the club have been saying the exact same thing, that we failed to prepare appropriately, as we normally do, with regards to our transfer window strategy, and we came up short. Once again, we've met a qualifier, a crunch match, something with everything riding on it. We didn't prepare accordingly for it, and you reap what you sow. However, and I will just say it again, just one more time, a heavy amount of the blame will have to be shouldered by the manager and by the players already in the building. Because despite the requirement, despite the obvious glaring holes in our squad and how much it could have benefited, woulda, coulda, should have, having extra players, that squad, that management team should have had more than enough to negotiate those two legs comfortably and see safely into the Champions League, along with all the riches and privilege that goes with that. They didn't. Questions are rightly being asked of everyone at the club, not just those upstairs, but those in the dugout and those that take to the field. But we didn't prepare, and we can keep on saying that until the cows come home. But insert season here or there, it is the way that it has been for time and time again. Now moving forward, the board have an opportunity. They've got an opportunity. How many times have they had an opportunity to actually make a bad situation slightly better? Now, of course, you know what we think of the board. We've done that board special. We've been shouting it for the rooftops. And in our past two videos, I have been pretty damning with regards to my thoughts on how the board have went about the football side of things at our club. Forget the business, forget the numbers, the hard football side of providing the manager and the best for the fans on the pitch. I read you that funny quote that Dermot Desmond said, that he thought that in 2025, the squad that we had would be better than that of the teams of Martin O'Neill, Brendan Rodgers first time, Gordon Strachan, Neil Lennon. It's laughable, isn't it? He also said that Europe was the yardstick for football progression. Well, it's 2025 now, Dermot, and your prediction or your hope or whatever it is are an absolute world apart. Miles off, mate, miles off. Change is needed. Of course, I will say it once again. If you were a CEO of any other company and decisions or part of decisions that you were involved in resulted in you losing out on an additional minimum amount of around about £40 million, well, you'd probably get your jotters. It remains to be seen if any change will happen at the board level. But here's a Celtic World Order exclusive for you, because we reached out to Celtic. We reached out and we got something back, and I want to play that to you right now.
The statement reads as follows: go away, mind your own business, gi's a break, it's no our fault, we're just custodians, gi's money. Thank you.
Now, I didn't say it was real. And if you don't laugh at these situations, then you would surely cry. But funnily, that clip there, as we all know, Only an Excuse, back when it was actually quite good and quite funny, that's from the early 90s. That was from 94. But it literally is cut and paste, isn't it? That could be a board response to absolutely anything for any given season. So that seems as relevant now as it did back then, because the board, yes, they don't speak incommunicado, but gi's your money. We've paid the season ticket money. We've bought the merchandise. We've bought the shirts. We've bought everything that goes with it. We've bought in. We're all in. But are they all in? People have says don't fall asleep at the wheel. Unfortunately, I think the car has veered off the road and smashed into the nearest wall. That's where I'm at with the board. But as I says, there's still time in this transfer window for us to at least make some sort of a dent, get in some level of quality, and hopefully push on. We have 3 trophies domestically that we want to get our hands on. Most notably, of course, we want to retain the title first and foremost, because that then unlocks the opportunity to once again give yourself a chance to get into the top table of European football. But we also have the Europa League. As undesirable as that is, for years over, I've heard people say, we could have made a fist in that tournament. Those teams are beatable. Well, for those that maybe want that, here we go. Let's find out. Let's see if it can actually make a dent in it. Remains to be seen. But we need to know what we're going to be getting in, if anything at all. After the game in Kazakhstan, the manager was asked, I said this the other night, he was asked, does this result affect your budget moving forward? His answer, I don't know. He was then asked if he knew what his budget full stop was. His answer, I don't know. So once again, back to here, communication is dysfunctional inside the club, not just from them to us as fans, but it seems from the board to whoever the footballing department is. Is that Tisdale? I don't know. To then to the manager. How would you not know in any other business where you have control of a budget, where you're the person to spend and be responsible for a budget? How many people or walks of life would you not know what your budget is? It's baffling. None's the answer. You would know what your parameters were, what your budget was for your season, for your year, whatever it is. Celtic and the manager don't seem to know what that is. Now, as I've says, it would be nice to know that at the front end. Let's just say hypothetically, it was right, Brendan, you're getting £25 million, full stop. That's it. Or you're going to get X amount at the front end. If you qualify for the Champions League, you will get Y added to that. If you drop down to Europa League, you will get Z added to that. It would be nice to know what the parameters were, wouldn't it be? Because then, if the manager knew what his budget was, and for whatever strange reason, not that he would, decided to hold off and then wanted to spend it all at the back end, then that's his decision. But at least he knew what he was playing with. But it seems that he doesn't. And that in itself is concerning. So, on that, down to business about these transfers, people might be coming in, people might be leaving. Let's talk about it. Balakwisha, Sarashi, yes, it's been brought up there. There we are. They've passed their medicals. And why haven't they signed yet? I can't agree enough with that, Thomas. Why haven't they signed yet? Now, it seems that in spite of that result, regardless of getting out, those guys were always going to be coming in. So, if that's the case, why weren't they signed 2 weeks ago? Why weren't they signed 10 days ago? Why weren't they signed before that deadline to register new players for those 2 games against Kairat? Now, would those two guys have, transformed that squad and, made us go out and hammer them over 2 legs? Well, it's who knows? Who knows? It's just surmising here. There's absolutely no guarantees that they would have. But it would have been nice, wouldn't it? It would have been nice to have the option that when KT inevitably had to go off at 60 minutes because he's not fit enough to finish a game at this moment in time. By the way, that's not me, put him on the party, Kieran Tierney. I think he's a great player. I love the guy. I think he's a fantastic addition. But I'm just talking cold, hard facts. The guy can't finish a game right now. Limited options. It would have been nice to have Sarachi, a guy his stature, Boca Plate, Boca, River Plate, Boca Juniors, Galatasaray, RB. Would have been nice to bring that on, wouldn't it? Balakwisha had a good season so far. Decent numbers. Would it have been nice to have another bona fide winger, left-sided, who can come on and create threat? Absolutely. No guarantees. Strange one, Celtic. I can't get my head around it. If they're in, regardless, why weren't they in earlier? That's all I'm going to say about that. And yep, Steve, that's it. I am sure these players haven't been announced yet because they are sitting down inside the boardroom or inside somewhere else in Celtic Park, waiting for those exciting questions like, tell us, what do you think of the Scottish cuisine? Have you ever ate a deep fried Mars bar and all that kind of birthday card garbage that we get out his mouth? Nothing insightful, just absolute fluff, total garbage. But let's get down to business and let's talk about the potential moves, because the first one that came out, completely new name, out of the blue, is a winger. And I want your thoughts on this. It seems that it's Celtic doing Celtic things, cheaping out, going for the cheap option, but also not only going for a cheap option, being extremely tight, going for said cheap option. And it's this one here. This is Hammarby IF in Sweden. It's their winger. He's a left winger. It's Sebastian Tunetke. Now, it says here, this is Anthony Joseph, everybody's favourite. Sky Sports lackey, pumping out the news. Of course, there's been mixed reports around this one. He's stating that apparently Celtic's opening bid of 2.6 million has been rejected, with the side looking for 5 million for the Tunisian international, with negotiations continue. Now, that last part, Tunisian international, we love throwing that they're an international into the mix, and it makes it sound really sexy and really appealing. We will move on to that one. But there has been mixed reports, I say, because Celtic-minded outlets, fan media, and the other ones that you see, blogs, for example, they have said a lesser amount. They have said that Celtic's initial bid was just over 1 million, with the club only wanting in around 2 million. Strange, and I'll tell you why it's strange, because the guy's contract expires at the end of December 2029. Now, what is the fee? Normally, I take Anthony Joseph things with a complete and utter pinch of salt, but I would imagine if a guy's tied into a contract quite as long as that, that it's more likely going to be closer to the numbers that he's reporting. But as I says, there is some good Celtic fan media out there, and they have reported otherwise. So it remains to be seen, and we'll keep an eye on this one if it progresses. But here is for the benefit of the doubt. This is this guy's stats. As I say, he's a 23-year-old left winger. Of course, with wingers, they're interchangeable. He can play over on the right-hand side. He's Norwegian born. He did play for the Norwegian unders, but he's since changed nationality to represent Tunisia. That's who he's now doing. However, international, it sounds great. Do you know how many caps he's got for Tunisia since 2021? 2. Now, I don't mean to poop on the party of Tunisia, but no disrespect to them. Last time I checked, Tunisia weren't exactly a brilliant team that were awash with amazing talent. So, aye, what does that maybe say about Sebastian, that he's only got 2 caps for them? After pivoting from the Norway side, because he probably knew he wasn't going to get a game for that, he moves to them. But let's have a wee look at his overall balance and see. 137 career games since 2018, of which he's been able to convert 16 goals and 11 assists. Now, what I will say about that is, do you think that is Celtic quality? Is that going to push us on as we look to fire on all cylinders on the domestic front, and more importantly, try to make a proper fist and a go off what we have been served up in the Europa League? He might turn out to be a superstar if he comes in the door, but just in face value, I am not getting excited about that one. I'm sorry, I'm simply not. It seems extremely cheap, doesn't it? Tell me what you think of him. The Sebastian Tunetke, is he doing anything for you? Is he the kind of guy that you think, oh, aye, he's a bit of that? That's exactly what Celtic need. I don't think, for my taking, that was going to excite me. We're talking about a team out of Sweden, and he's Reckers Plankton. It's absolutely garbage. You know, we look at the quality that we had in Nicholas Kuhn. For all that he was up and down, he put out some heavy numbers last season. You need to replace that. We look at what an able and fit Jota can, and looked as if he promised to do before injury, could put out. We need to replace that, because Daisen Maeda, there's question marks over him. He's not been producing at this time. James Forrest's a great servant, but we can't keep going to that well. And Yang, who we're also going to talk about today, by the way, the lesser said about him, the better. But yep, that's the first one out the traps. And if you think about it, with some of the other links that we were at, it was, for example, Uriaseta. who we bid £4.5 million for in January. And he's now since moved on to Twente of all sides for, you heard it, €4.5 million. So what is the question there? What are Celtic playing at? Why did we suddenly pivot away from that guy and now we're looking at guys like him? But also another name that's been thrown out there is Jacob Breum at Go Ahead Eagles, who, by the way, are actually in the Europa League and could quite possibly be a team that we end up playing. Now, there's been another follow-up on that. You all remember Celtic went in with the cheapo bids. The side were holding out for in and around about €5 million. Celtic were wanting to go in low ball. They says, take a leaf out of Rangers' book, ha ha ha, and ridiculed us in the public domain. Well, there's been a follow-up for that, and it's saying that that deal all looks dead in the water. We probably will, Steve-o. We probably will. Paddy's saying, is it probably better than what we have? Hi, Paddy, quite possibly. But at the same time, it just is a sad indictment. It shows you where we are as a club. If a guy like that with those kind of poor numbers we're considering as being better than we have, that's a sad, sad indictment on the state of our squad. We're literally now at that stage where I will take anything. That's what fans are almost like. And Celtic by no means should be that. But back to the Jacob Breum. The report is saying that we have moved away from that, distanced ourselves from pursuing that as, and I quote, Celtic look to rein in spending. Rein in spending? You can fucking rein it in anymore if you tried. I mean, we've spent, about £3 million so far, and I repeat, you'll be bored of this one. News, Celtic still, from just player sales at this moment in time for this one season, still sit with £21.75 million in profit. That's after that £3 million spend. The Balakwisha comes in the door, I believe it's between 4.5 to £5 million. You take that off, you're still nearly £17 million up before you've even done anything. The loan fee for Sarashi, extremely low. It's sitting about, I believe, about 100 to 150,000 for a full season straight up loan. So that's not even denting that. Not even denting it. And then we'll get on to players that we're going to talk about here who could potentially go, and you're topping that up. Now, yes, the £3 million spend, there's been some opportunistic spends in there. Nygren, inexpensive, opportunistic because his contract was low. Top value for money, yes, positive. Kieran Tierney, yes, positive. Wages. But that's not an excuse. That's not enough to say, well, we brought in these players. Look at that. It's irrelevant. The spend's abysmal. It's embarrassing. Osmond, where is he? What is he? What's he going to be doing? Inamura, we'll go on to him. Going to get shipped out, if reports are to be believed. And then Shin Yamada, completely unknown quantity, could turn out to be a hit, but remains to be seen. At this moment in time, we're still just doing that, shot in the dark, and hoping that it works. So there's no reason why we can't go out and spend at least that minimum, that 16-odd million that remains after Balakwisha signs, comfortably, plus a wee bit more on top. So what about other news in terms of potential moves? Well, another one that came out, and it's a winger, was Stengs from Feyenoord. We all heard that Celtic's interest was going to be pursued and dependent on getting a Champions League. Now, that's not the case. Is he still of the standard that we should be pursuing? Absolutely, I believe so. But with the fee, with Feyenoord wanting a permanent deal as opposed to a loan and wanting in around £6, maybe £7 million for it, do you see Celtic doing that? I don't, unfortunately. I hate saying that. I really, really don't. If they were to sell one, maybe even two, who knows, players, they might do something crazy and reinvest some of that. But at this moment in time, where we are, do I think they're going to go out and splash the cash in Stengs? No. But there's wee twists in the tail because there is other interest in him. Leicester, for example, yep, down the Championship, but they can offer him that. And sometimes players are mercenaries in this modern day. But that move all depends on them selling one of their own players, Bilal Al-Khanous. If he goes, they'll move for Stengs. But that still gives Celtic an opportunity to try and get in there if they want. If they've shown interest and went in and had any initial talks, follow that up whilst you still can. Because despite it being the Europa League, we still do have European football platform to offer. And we also still do have the shop window that has been at Celtic, the opportunity to get domestic trophies, and again, give a decent showing of yourself potentially in European football. That might appeal to some players. And for a guy like Stengs, who's out of favourite Feyenoord, it's as good as any deal. But will we stump up the cash to do it? There's also a wee curveball in that Pisa and Serie A have come in and they're interested in him. Now, they can't offer him the guarantee of winning trophies, being a potential fan hit with an amazing fan base and have European football. But it can offer you the sexy lifestyle that is living in Italy and playing against the best of the best in Serie A. So again, that's appealing for players. The mercenary footballer that wants the lifestyle and they want the money, sometimes over the football and sometimes over the trophies. But Stengs at this moment in time is very much cooled off and very much on the back burner, with just Tuneki, the Tunisian international, as being the sort of main focus, it would appear, for us. However, there is chat of players moving out. Let's jump straight in at the thick end and go with this one here. EFL Zone. It's one of these online publications. It's kind of just broke over last night. I didn't really have the chance and opportunity to deep dive into their account to really look at their credentials, how reliable they are. But they are close to about 100,000 followers on there, and they are saying that Swansea City are eyeing a move for Big Adam Ida. Adam Ida. Where do we start with Big Adam? Now, yes, Chilpel saying, come on, Swansea. I'm going to say it. I'm going to make the joke. I'll drive him down there free. I won't even take petrol money. Or if he wants to get a plane or a train, I'll take him to wherever that destination is to allow him to get down there. I'll do it for you, Adam. I'll get you out the door. But what do you think of that? Now, Adam Ida, for the benefit of the chat, let's bring up his stats, because people will always tell us that he has done very well at Celtic despite limited game time, that there's a player in there that he's having a bit of a crisis at Celtic at this moment in time. Now, I've brought up exclusively his Celtic stats here just for discussion's sake. Adam Ida, there we are. In total, he's made the pitch 76 times, 3,420 minutes. He's hit the back of the net 29 times. He's assisted 3. Most notable hits there, of course, best season would be 24 to 25, 8 in the league, 3 in the Champions League. Now, that is important when we talk about trying to sell this guy, because regardless of his sort of up and down form and looking like a guy that's won a raffle ticket to play for Celtic, 3 Champions League goals and a good campaign will always do well for your value, as we've seen with Nicholas Kuhn, for example. That was definitely part and parcel of him getting the fee that we did, because he played in the Champions League and he done it there. Now, Paddy's saying, of course, don't sell before you bring in replacements. I 100% agree, but as we know with this Celtic board, that's rolling the dice, isn't it? That's us expecting what we've never seen. That's us expecting planning. We will bring in guys so that we're not caught short when we're pursuing folk and they go, you need a striker or you need the X position, so we're going to charge you this because we know you're desperate and you need it. Yes, that would be the sensible thing to do, but also as well, budget cutting, tightening the purse strings, whatever you want to call it, the chances of them going out and spending that 16.75 million that will remain after Balquisha, plus a wee bit more, before then try to force guys out the door, it's very, very unlikely they'll do that unless they had a cast iron, almost like we saw with the Kyogo and Jota thing, where it's all negotiated and it's just like that, switch. That's probably the only way they're going to do it, because they are, once again, risk averse when it comes to spending money, just in case that deal falls through. And oh my God, we've got 2 players in the building here that we're going to have to pay wages for. That's exactly what they'd say. But Adam Ida, the stats look good on paper, but the eyeball test doesn't lie. Your eyes don't deceive you. What you saw is what you are getting. What do you think? Has Adam Ida ran his course at Celtic? Is it time for the board? Is it time for the manager to just cut their losses and say, didn't quite work out, and then he moves on and he goes into the annals of being one of those guys that it just didn't work out at Celtic, but then he turns into this amazing player and everybody can say with hindsight, look, I told you he's a player. Well, sometimes that is the case. It's the nature of football. Some people can't deal with the expectation, the jersey weighs heavy and all that stuff, and then go on and forge out fantastic careers wherever else they go. There's a long list of players that fit in that category, and Adam Ida quite could possibly be that one there. There we go. Paul McGowan saying this. Again, I'm just bringing it up. It's strictly rumour and innuendo, but saying that he was off to Swansea. Yeah, you know what? It might be the old WhatsApp CSC rumour mill garbage, but there's often no smoke without fire. And I wouldn't be surprised that Celtic are looking at some of these guys that are in and around their squad that are maybe not been living up to the billing and looking to move them on. So that might not surprise you. I wouldn't be surprised if they do move on Adam Ida. But what I say is it's imperative that we get someone else or multiple guys in the door, because as we well know, there's also the rumour that this will be the acid test. We've said it. People have contacted us independently. Again, it could be rumour mill CSC with no substance to it, but we were contacted independently on 2 occasions saying after that qualifier, regardless of the result, Dyson Maeda will be sold, with reports saying upwards of 20 million, saying it could be in the pocket of 25, maybe even with add-ons 27 million. Now, if you looked at form last season, you'd go, absolutely, yeah. And that will still, if any player is going to be sold, last season's form will weigh heavy versus what we've seen so far. But undoubtedly, Dyson Maeda doesn't look like Dyson Maeda last season. It looks like he's reverted back to old school Maeda that we've got, that guy that couldn't hit the back of a barn door, crosses a stray into the crowd and taking off somebody's poor face, knocking a pie out their hand and fluffing his lines in front of goal. And the Kaira Almaty over the 2 legs was just another prime example of Dyson fluffing his lines when there's one-on-one situations. Now, you go back into last season, there's been one-on-ones versus Rangers, Aberdeen, and pretty much most games this season so far. He looks like a guy whose head is anywhere but at Celtic. Now, will he be sold? I tell you what, if anything in and around 20 million comes in, I would bet on Celtic to do it. I don't want it to happen. I still think that he's one of our best players when he starts kicking on in form. And maybe, and I hate quoting him, but maybe similar with Russell Martin, you know, that fool that's, you know, he's skating on thin ice after they get hammered last night. He says that when there's a transfer window open, there's uncertainty. Some players are maybe moving, looking to try and make moves, and their head isn't in the game. Once that slam's shut and you know where you are, then you have no choice but to knuckle down and kick on. Why? Because you need to make the best of your situation, make yourself the most sellable asset if that's what you want to do, and look towards January. But also in Dyson Maeda's case, you need to be thinking about the World Cup and wanting to show form that's going to get you into that squad guaranteed. But I do have reservations, I have concerns over Dyson Maeda. And if Dyson Maeda were to leave, we couldn't really afford, and it shows again, sad state of affairs of where we are. We couldn't afford to lose Adam Ida as well. Unthinkable, because Shin Yamada, untested, unknown quantity at this moment in time. Johnny Kenny, I hate it because it sounds patronising. Bless the guy. Puts in great effort, but do I think he's going to be a guy you can hang my hat on? Absolutely not. And Callum Osmond, well, the less said about him at this moment in time, the better, because the chances of him contributing are absolutely none. But concerning times, if we've got these kind of guys that might look to move on, Adam Ida says, I've not got a problem with that. But that would have to be Adam Ida with someone else coming in and not losing Dyson Maeda. Now, on that, the concerning thing that I've got at this moment in time is rumours and reports of Celtic looking at strikers, bona fide number 9s. There's not many, is there? Now, we've seen that, and it is incredibly lazy journalism, incredibly lazy Celtic signing policy. We've seen the Jamie Vardy stuff. We've spoke about him. We've brought it up. I'll show you the wee graphic here again. That's all went a wee bit quiet. But again, look through it. Regardless of his stature, regardless of his age at 38, he's got the credentials to be a hit at Celtic. But the biggest problem I have with that, similar to the way that we've dealt with the Simpson Pusey thing, where he travelled over and we're told, well, he's not going to be ready until after the international break. He's not going to be ready. He's not quite up to speed. That's a young guy in the prime, fit, training with Manchester City, coming up, and he's no fit. Then what's a 38-year-old Jamie Vardy that's been self-training and working with amateur teams? What level of fitness would he potentially be if he came in the door? And as I say, if we're looking at maybe moving on Adam Ida, potentially the fear that is losing a Maeda plus others, Anybody that comes in, striker, they need to hit the ground running, they need to be ready to go, not get them up to speed in 2 and 3, 4 weeks. Now, Jamie Vardy, I would take him, but we need other people in the front end of it. And another name that's come out, something that might be of interest to Celtic, it might be absolutely nothing, is remember Louis Montagneau that plays at Cluj? We went in with that bid a couple of weeks ago. We were told it was laughed out, 6.5 million quid, which I think personally, when you look at Cluj's record of fees, it's well beyond the highest transfer fee that they would have received. It's well beyond what they would spend. But their director of football, their man in charge, apparently laughed off and says, haha, no way, we want about 15 million. But as I said then, I'll say again, I'm sorry, Cluj, nobody's giving you 15 million for this guy. But in a twist of fate, he is no longer playing for them. Well, at least he's down tools or he's protesting. Is it because he wants to push a move? Potentially, but it's something that's justified because according to reports, he's owed around about 200,000 in unpaid wages. This was part of a deal said to be like a wee Brucey bonus for committing to a new deal, and he's still to get that 200k. And until he gets it, he's not pulling on the Cluj jersey. That could maybe just be a wee thing if you've got an unsettled player, an unhappy player at his club, not because of he's trying to down tools for a move, but justifiable so because he's not bloody paid what he's due. If Celtic were interested in him, that's one that I would look to try and slide in and turn his head and say, look, we know we're not in the Champions League, but look at all the things we can offer you. And again, if you've got a player that's maybe a wee bit unhappy, yes, Cluj could go and give him 200 grand and always happy. But at the same time, when I profiled them, you look at their wage structure, you look at how much they pay, 200k in most cases is a signing for them. So they might not be quite as willing to go and give that money to that guy. And as I say, we've got to take advantage of anything if it's a guy of interest to us. Montagneau, when we looked at him, or Montino, however you want to say his name, I'm not great at the old pronunciations. I do try my best. But when you look at his profile, when you look at his record, it was what Celtic need. It was very promising. I would look at that one, and hopefully it's something that we are be looking at. But let's get back to potential moves on the way out. And of course, the next one, I'm pretty sure I'll unanimously see it in the comments, is of course Yang. Now this get broke again. Sky Sports have grabbed hold of it, but it again originated from a fan-derived platform down in Birmingham, where they are saying that they have made an approach for Yang, saying they're understood that they're assessing the situation and they've yet to give the green light to any move. I wonder why that is. Oh, that's right. That's because we don't have any wingers. That's because we've no brought in anybody. That's because we've sat and done the Celtic thing when we've glaringly knew that we needed to bring in wingers. We've not done it yet. Yes, Balakwisha's all but done and he'll be unveiled soon enough, but that's still not enough. We, through gritted teeth, allowed Tilio to move on. But again, and I say it and I hate saying it, and you'll be bored of the phrase, it's a sad, sad indictment of where Celtic are at that we need to hang on to Yang. Now, it does say there that he apparently expressed an interest to maybe want to explore new avenues. Yes, that's probably because he's been in and out the team and he's not been able to nail down a position, but justifiably so, because he's not produced the goods. He's not been, as we say, a guy that you can hang your hat on. So, yes, of course he's wanting to negotiate potential move. Of course it was Norwich City and then that all died off. Why? Because we couldn't let him go. But now it looks as if it's Birmingham. Maybe people say that's his level. We know that Kyogo's joined up there. We see how well Awata's doing there, and he'll be familiar with those guys, obviously playing with Kyogo. Was Awata still around when Yang was here? I can't quite remember. Let me know in the comments. But either way, he might want to link up with Kyogo once again. And I'm pretty sure that when you look at what those guys are down there, they seem extremely happy and they seem to be enjoying the football. And that might just be the kind of move that he wants to do. So if the value's right, I would move him on. And again, just for benefit of, is it a big loss to us? Forget about that we don't have anybody situation. Let's just have a look at that and ask the question and say, is he worth keeping around? Let's have a wee quick swatch. Let's have a wee look at his stats and what Yang has done since being at Celtic. There we are. Good old trusty transfer market. You can't say better than that. Let's have a wee gander through Yang's stats. I've brought them up exclusively here for Celtic, and as you can see so far, he's hit the pitch 70 times, 2,862 minutes, clocking in a whopping 7 goals and 9 assists. Of course, there you can see it, 24 to 25 season. There's the wee purple patch. There it is, an assist in the Champions League. We've got a couple of goals there, and then we've got a couple of assists. This season, nothing. Garbage. Plankton. Before it, absolutely garbage. Now, again, as I said when I looked at Tonetke, is Yang Celtic standard? We can say, Paddy's saying keep Yang. He's in the Yang gang. Good for you, Paddy. I like it. You'll never catch Steve on a Yang gang shirt. But keep Yang, is it keep Yang because we've nothing? Or is it keep Yang because we genuinely believe that he could turn into a player that we can cultivate, that can be our first team starter and then eventually punt for big money, because that's what we all hope into. That's what this board hope, and that's what it. Unfortunately, some of our fans just pine for selling, making money. For me, Yang, people said after the cup final against Aberdeen that he should never pull on a Celtic jersey again. People said after stinking performances against Rangers they should never pull on a Celtic jersey again. People said after Kairat Almaty, Yang should never put on a Celtic jersey again. Is that why do we keep him then? Now, Yang's saying, Charlie's saying on the YouTube, Yang is quick. Yang's quick. Is that what we've came to? You know, I always say this when we always sign players, and one of my alarm bells start ringing. Let's see if somebody turns around and they tell you, what's the player like? And they don't go to, oh, he's got a great first touch, or you want to see he's delivering in the box, or he's hard in the tackle, or whatever it is. See if it's, he's rapid. I just start laughing. He's rapid. Brilliant. There's been many rapid players in football, but a lot of them have been absolutely garbage. Look no further than the boy that Rangers had, the Welsh boy. Name deserts me. Scored a belter against Celtic at Ibrox. Absolutely rapid, yes, but by God, his first touch was like a trampoline. I'm not buying into players being rapid. Yang, for me, wash your hands, see you later. If you can clean your nose on him, go and get him out of this building. But again, unfortunately, I caveat it. Only if we have planning in place and we're going to bring somebody in. That's what concerns me. But Yang, Ida, the guys that we spoke about so far, would I lose any sleep about losing them? No. But the only thing that would maybe make me temporarily wake up during the night would be the thought of who's at the back end to fill their place. That's the horrible situation we're in. That's why probably folk, like we can see in some of the comments, that's why people are saying we can't let them go. It's desperation. It's embarrassing. It shows you the state of our squad, that people are basing it off just to have the number in the door, just to have somebody sitting there. We shouldn't be looking at it that way, but that's the harsh reality that we find ourselves in. And to finish up the rumour roundup, to bring it all round to a close, one last one, and that is, of course, this here. Inamura. Now, it says here, according to Celtic Way, they do some great stuff, can put out some good stories. They are saying that apparently he's been made available for loan this season. It says there, of course, made his debut against Livingston, having joined us from League One, or the J League, sorry, Albirex Niigata in Japan. Now, it was funny because we spoke about that and we were unsure if he could go out on loan. Now, we know that Celtic have 5 spaces where they can do cross-border, you know, Europe, beyond, England, but they can also loan out quite readily in Scotland. That's fine. It keeps them in-house. It's not cross-border. Now, we surmised and we says, I don't think he can actually go out on loan because he played in the Japanese league. He then played for Celtic. He's represented 2 teams. Now, I don't know if anyone has real insight on it. This is a story that's been put out, has been put out beyond the Celtic view. And usually it's because the club have intimated that to be put out there and the ether to be shared. They must be able to go out on loan if that's getting reported. I don't know. Is it maybe the fact that Japan isn't in Europe, so it doesn't apply in that sense that he can go out and play for 3 teams technically? I don't know. Let us know if you have any insight on it. But either way, he's a guy that Celtic are looking to loan out. And I think, to be honest, it's a balancing act. And again, I'm falling back in what I've just criticised. Why? Because we don't really seem to have anybody around the door. Of course, Sarachi's coming in. He's a left back, and that gives us cover. He can also migrate over to the right wing, or so the right back position. But that's still leaving you with your Liam Scales as your additional backup option, and that's quite frankly not good enough. We need more than that. Inamura, would I keep him around? Would I thrust him into games? Honestly, no, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't do it. I've seen enough from him from an attacking standpoint. I think he looks like he's got a tidy touch, decent range of passing. He's quite good at sort of, reading the game and intercepting. But whether you want to hear it or not, whether you agree with it or not, the reality is, the actual harsh reality is in the time that he's been on the pitch for Celtic, he hasn't actually been tested properly defensively. I'm talking shoulder to shoulder, ball winning, having to go up and win headers, proper defensive work. Not the stuff that looks good when you've got all of the ball and plenty of time to pass the ball around and that kind of thing. That's great, and that is, but look at guys like Bernabei, for example. He looked quite good at doing that kind of stuff and getting forward, but absolutely tripe garbage at defending. Now, the manager's come out and says that he doesn't feel that his strengths lie defensively and that he's not at the level required for that side of the game. So that would beg the question, well, why throw him in a game against Livingston? Why, if that is the case and you don't think he's good enough, but you're happy to play him against Livingston, why don't we keep him about and we play him in games at Celtic Park where you're playing against that type of opposition, lower opposition, where you're less likely to be tested and you can settle in and try and find your level? Yeah, that is a valid question. But at the same time, we've kind of got to trust a wee bit of judgment on what the coaching staff see. And I know that's funny because we're sitting here and saying, what do they see in Ida? They play him. What do we see in him? They play him, so on and so forth. I think, and people are saying there's a lot defending there and saying that he is a great player. I don't mean to sound negative, and I'm not saying that your point is invalid or wrong, but based on what? The sample size is that. How many times have we got excited about a player on a very, very small sample size? I'll chuck one right at you. Efan Juarez. He looked like an amazing player. Everybody jumped on it. Wow, this guy's amazing. Turned out crap. Garbage. Get him in the bin. Throw him in the nearest skip. Now, Inamura, I'm not saying he won't. I hope every single player that pulls on the Celtic jersey, I wish the best for them. I will call them out. I will criticise. I will commentate because that's what we have to do. We're a Celtic platform. We're here to talk about everything. We're not here to just clap around and say it's brilliant. But I can't suddenly get excited and think that Inamura is a great player based on what I've saw. I think he's a guy that shows promise, but Murney's going the other way and saying is absolutely shite. I think polar opposite. I think that's scathing. I think that's the complete opposite. I don't think he's an amazing player, but I also don't think he's absolutely shite. Somewhere in between, and it's up to us to try and find the way to get the best out of him. Could it be keeping him around the squad just as a contingency option? Now that we've got KT, now that we've got Sarachi, who knows what else we might get? And obviously, there's the old move Liam Scales over, as much as I hate that. If that's the way they're wanting to play it, that's fine. You might want to keep him in around the squad for these lesser games, wean him into the side and try and build him up to a level. Alternatively, you do put him out on loan. Because what's the other option if we keep him in the club and he's not going to be sitting? He's either going to get discarded down to the B team where he's really not going to get tested. He's going to be playing absolute plankton garbage. He's going to be playing part-time plumbers, Maryhill stank lifters, all that kind of crap. We've seen time over. That does not test our players. If he was going to be put out on loan, I would want to keep him in Scotland. Try and get him to a sort of mid to lower level SPL team or maybe Championship. That is going to at least test him to a decent degree. And you can also keep an eye on him. And then it also means that he's on a short leash, that if you need to cut short that loan, you could even negotiate that into the terms, that we have the right to terminate his loan at any given time. Then do it. And you can bring him back in if you need him, and then you can give him a chance. But Inamura has very much been made to go up for loan. And again, I'm not overly concerned about it. I think the guy's shown a wee bit of promise, but I still say he's not been tested defensively. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe he needs to get chucked into a game where we know it's going to be hard, we know it's going to be tough, we know he's going to be under pressure, and then we can come back and we can reevaluate this situation and get a proper look at what it is. Because, yeah, he shows a lot of promise, a lot of credentials at other parts of his game, but I have not seen him go shoulder to shoulder with a guy. I've not seen him down and dirty, sliding in, ball winning. I've not seen him rise above his marker and header the ball away. I've not seen him do these things. I've seen him do great passing, intercepting, and so on and so forth. But he's a defender, and as we say over and over and over, defenders first and foremost need to be able to defend. The management team are telling us that they've not been impressed, and that's probably they've not been impressed in training against his colleagues. And that's a controlled environment. That's not going to be a physical environment. So if he's not looking defensively strong in drills, bounce games, whatever it is they do in training, then you've got to take that at least at a wee bit of face value and think there's a level of truth in it. But remains to be seen. So anyway, guys, that is us fully up to date with the rumours at this moment in time. No doubt as soon as this disappears, we'll be go over there and we'll have a look and something will come out. No doubt, as soon as this goes up, there'll be another rumour, and that's just the nature of the beast. Hopefully, the most important thing I want to see is that we end up getting some time to get these guys out there, that we get to see Balakwisha, that we get to see Sarachi unveiled, and they've got a scarf above their head and in place, and they can be used as an option there. Having a wee look there. I hope everybody's happy in there. I hope there's no arguing in the comments. As we say, look, guys, we're all Celtic supporters. This is the great thing about these sort of environments. We're here to give our opinions. We're not here to necessarily agree with it. But all I'd say is just have a wee bit of respect for each other. We're all here. We're all Celtic supporters. We all want the best for our club. There's no need to argue. We're not exactly in the worst position ever. You could argue it could be a lot worse, and I hate saying that because it's sort of one of these, it's not looking great for us, but it could always be a lot worse, and it could always be a lot worse. Yes, we have our problems to deal with regards to this squad and getting people in, but we find ourselves in a far better position than our nearest rivals, we say. And just on that, what about last night? It would be remiss not to say it. Now, I know that us slagging them off is a bit like slagging off your mate, telling him his car's an absolute banger when you don't even have a driving licence and can't drive. But they laughed at us, and it's the nature of football fandom. It comes round, they laugh, they get absolutely hammered. They'll have that fallback. We know it, we'll hear it. At least we get beat off a good team. Well, that is true. But there's dysfunction in their ranks. There's a manager that they're baying for his blood. They want him out the door. There's players. He's told us once again that some of their apparent key heroes don't want to be there. It's just stacking up, isn't it? You could say it's stacking up for a fall for us because we find ourselves playing them off the back of a dismal, disappointing result, wanting to bounce back, wanting to give us fans something to cheer about. They are at their lowest ebb at this moment in time. And we should be going there and tearing them apart. But after what I saw against Kaira Almaty, I'm taking nothing for granted. I think, as I said, it could be like two bald men fighting over a comb. It could be either a nothing each stinker, it could be a demolition job to one side or the other, or it could be an absolute goal fest draw. One thing's for sure, it's probably going to be entertaining, and we'll be back through the week to talk about that, preview that game as it comes up. But until the next time, take care of yourselves, hit that subscribe button. Remember, it costs you nothing. Give it a wee thumbs up, share Celtic World Order. Until the next time, you take care of yourselves. God bless, and as always, hail, hail. We'll see you later.